In the medieval world, sleep was far more than a simple biological necessity. It was intertwined with superstition, social hierarchy, hygiene, and the rhythms of daily life. In crowded villages, drafty castles, and sprawling manors, the way people slept reflected the environment, the era, and the beliefs that governed their understanding of health and the unseen world. Far from the modern bedroom with a single bed, sheets, and climate control, medieval sleep was shaped by necessity, culture, and the strange rituals people trusted to protect them from both physical and spiritual harm. In castles and noble households, warmth was scarce, and rooms were often shared by many. Beds were not always the private sanctuaries we imagine. Kings and queens, nobles, and servants alike sometimes slept in communal spaces, where the body heat of several people provided comfort during frigid winters. In some courts, even monarchs were known to sleep near attendants or guards, partly for security, partly to reinforce hierarchies that ensured the monarch's life was never fully private. Large feather mattresses and wool blankets were prized possessions, yet they could rarely prevent the chill of stone walls and open hearths, and people often dressed in layers, sometimes sleeping fully clothed to retain warmth. For ordinary villagers, the situation was even more peculiar. Families often shared a single bed or multiple beds in a small, smoky room, where cooking fires and livestock might also be present. Livestock sleeping in the same room was a practical measure to conserve heat, though it brought unusual smells and the ever-present risk of disease. Sleeping fully clothed or partially dressed was common, and even children were sometimes swaddled in layers of cloth for both warmth and protection from what people feared in the night. Dreams and nightmares were taken seriously, as the medieval mind often saw them as portents, messages, or even warnings from the divine. The timing of sleep followed natural light, for candles were precious and artificial lighting limited. People often went to bed shortly after sunset, rising with the sun, and in many regions, the night was divided into two distinct phases. The first sleep, lasting a few hours, would be followed by a period of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night. During this time, people might pray, reflect, perform small chores, or even visit neighbors. The second sleep then came until dawn. Scholars have found references to first sleep and second sleep in letters, diaries, and court documents, revealing a rhythm of life that seems alien to modern sensibilities. Even the beds themselves held strange customs. Bed curtains, ropes to suspend the mattresses, and canopies were used not just for privacy, but to protect sleepers from drafts, insects, and spirits. Herbs such as lavender, rosemary, or vervain were placed beneath pillows or in sachets, believed to ward off evil or bring pleasant dreams. Some believed that placing a knife or iron objects under the bed would repel witches or malevolent spirits, a practice seen both in rural cottages and in noble chambers. Medieval medicine further shaped sleep habits. Physicians believed that certain humors or bodily imbalances could affect rest, leading people to use poultices, baths, or special foods before bedtime. Warm milk, spiced wine, or herbal infusions were common prescriptions, and monks in monasteries might follow strict schedules that dictated sleep and wake times to align with prayers, fasting, and study. The overlap of superstition, religion, and medical theory created a complex web of bedtime rituals that might seem absurd today, but were logical in the worldview of the time. Sleep in the medieval world was never just about resting the body. It was deeply intertwined with social structure. Among the nobility, for instance, beds were symbols of wealth and status as much as comfort. The largest chambers often contained multiple beds for family members, attendants, and sometimes even favored pets. In England and France, canopy beds with heavy curtains and embroidered hangings were standard in castles and manor houses. These curtains were drawn not only to retain warmth, but also to shield occupants from drafts, insects, and the prying eyes of servants. The higher a person's rank, the more elaborate the bed and its coverings, and in some cases, the number of attendants sleeping in the room also increased. Monarchs like Edward I of England or Philip IV of France often had chambers crowded with trusted aides who could respond instantly to any threat, or to assist in elaborate nighttime routines, which could include waking rituals, changing nightshirts, or even tending to minor ailments without disturbing the king or queen's sleep. For ordinary people, sleeping arrangements were dictated more by practicality than ceremony. In rural cottages, families often shared a single large bed or a raised platform. In colder regions, the sleeping area was built close to the hearth, so that body heat and the residual warmth from cooking fires kept the room tolerable during freezing nights. Livestock were sometimes brought inside, not merely as heat sources, but also to protect animals from theft or predators. This practice may seem strange or uncomfortable by modern standards, yet it was entirely logical for medieval villagers struggling to survive harsh winters with limited resources. Some historical accounts also suggest that children were swaddled in layers of cloth or straw mattresses, both for warmth and because infant mortality was tragically high. Swaddling was believed to protect babies from the evil eye and other malevolent spirits believed to roam the night. Nighttime was not always continuous. In many regions, people practiced what historians call segmented sleep. After the first period of sleep, lasting 3 to 4 hours, there would be a quiet waking period known as the watch or wakeful hour. During this time, some engaged in prayer, reflection, or writing. Monks might use it for studying religious texts, while peasants could perform small chores like tending fires, repairing tools, or preparing food for the next day. The second sleep then occurred until dawn. References to first and second sleep appear in medieval diaries, letters, and legal records across England, France, and Germany, illustrating that this pattern was not isolated but a widespread cultural norm. During this time, dreams held significance. They were often interpreted as omens, moral lessons, or warnings, and some households kept written records of dreams or consulted local priests or wise women to understand their meanings. Hygiene around sleep was another unusual aspect of medieval life. In much of Europe, bathing was infrequent due to beliefs that water could weaken the body and allow disease to enter through open pores. Instead, people relied on dry washing, changing of linens, and the use of perfumes or scented powders. In wealthier households, linens were changed more frequently and aromatic herbs such as lavender, rosemary, or vervain were placed in beds or pillows. In monasteries, monks often slept on straw or rush-stuffed mattresses, and herbs were similarly used to promote cleanliness and stave off insects. In the Ottoman Empire, hammams and nightly ablutions were more common, emphasizing ritual cleanliness before sleep, whereas in Japan, ceremonial washing and purification rituals before bedtime were integral to Shinto and Buddhist practices. Medical beliefs also shaped sleep. Physicians of the time, following the teachings of Galen and Hippocrates, believed that sleep could be influenced by the balance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If a person was overly melancholic, too sanguine, or excessively phlegmatic, sleep might be disturbed. Remedies ranged from drinking herbal teas and spiced wines to more unusual practices such as placing certain stones under the pillow, reciting prayers, or even sleeping with specific body positions believed to align the humors. Insomnia, restlessness, or nightmares were often interpreted as both physical and spiritual imbalances, demonstrating how intertwined medicine, superstition, and daily life were. Even furniture and room construction reflected concerns about sleep. Beds were raised off the floor, sometimes suspended with ropes, to avoid drafts and pests. Curtains and canopies helped trap warmth and maintain privacy in rooms often shared by multiple occupants. Windows were small and high to protect against cold and intruders, meaning rooms could be dim even during the day. This lack of light further reinforced segmented sleep, as the rhythm of night and day dictated when people rested and when they remained active. For many medieval people, sleep was inseparable from religion. Monks and nuns in monasteries and convents followed strict schedules known as the canonical hours, which divided the day and night into periods of prayer, study, work, and rest. Sleep was intentionally limited and highly structured, with a brief rest after evening prayers and a wakeful period before matins at midnight or in the very early hours. These periods of rest were never purely physical. They were moments to reflect on divine will, recite prayers silently, or meditate on holy texts. Even the lowliest peasant often mirrored some of these practices, offering nightly prayers or crossing themselves before bed to seek protection through divine intervention. Holy objects, charms, and rituals were believed to safeguard sleepers from evil spirits, demons, or witchcraft. Many households kept crucifixes above the bed, blessed water nearby, or slept with a Bible or prayer book under the pillow. Herbs such as rue, vervain, or sage were not merely fragrant, they were considered potent spiritual tools. In some regions, families would anoint beds with holy oils or sprinkle salt around sleeping areas to ward off malevolent forces. Medieval Europeans believed that evil entities roamed at night, and without proper protections, people risked illness, misfortune, or spiritual corruption. These beliefs, while seeming strange to modern eyes, were part of the worldview that shaped every aspect of life, including the most private hours of sleep. Dreams held a special place in spiritual life. Clerics, wise women, and sometimes even kings kept detailed notes on dreams, interpreting them as messages from God, warnings of impending events, or insights into one's moral state. Vivid nightmares were not dismissed as psychological phenomena, but were often treated as moral lessons, punishable sins, or calls to prayer. Some monasteries even employed interpreters of dreams, people believed to possess spiritual insight into the hidden meanings of visions that appeared during first or second sleep. Certain saints' biographies include accounts of visions received while asleep, emphasizing that the boundary between the physical and the spiritual world was particularly porous at night. Seasonal changes influenced religious sleep rituals as well. During winter, nights were long and cold, and monasteries often staggered sleeping arrangements, allowing some monks to stay awake longer for additional prayer vigils while others rested. In summer, the short nights allowed for more continuous sleep, but even then, spiritual discipline required early rising for dawn prayers. Festivals, holy days, and vigils disrupted normal sleep patterns. In preparation for Christmas, Easter, or Pentecost, monks, nuns, and devout laypeople might forego portions of rest entirely, staying awake for prayers, chants, and candlelight rituals. These practices emphasized that sleep was not only functional but moral, a daily opportunity to align with divine order. Even the structure of sleep was spiritualized. The segmented sleep pattern, first sleep, wakeful period, and second sleep, was used for quiet reflection, confession, prayer, or preparation for morning mass. This midnight wakefulness was rarely idle. People might meditate on their deeds, seek forgiveness, or recite psalms to ensure spiritual safety through the night. Dreams experienced during first sleep were often considered more truthful or prophetic than those during second sleep, giving rise to elaborate methods for recording, interpreting, and acting upon visions. Insomnia was a common concern in the medieval world, but it was treated very differently than it is today. People believed sleeplessness could be caused by an imbalance of the four humors, spiritual disturbances. Remedies ranged from the practical to the peculiar. Herbs were among the most popular treatments. Chamomile, valerian, rosemary, and lavender were brewed into teas or placed beneath pillows to induce drowsiness. Warm milk, often spiced with honey or nutmeg, was used to calm the body, while aromatic baths infused with flowers and herbs were believed to soothe both body and spirit before bedtime. In noble households, insomnia remedies could be extravagant. Feather mattresses were sometimes layered with lavender or other fragrant herbs. Some physicians recommended gentle rocking, or even sleeping in slightly upright positions to ease discomfort. In contrast, peasants often had more pragmatic approaches, such as keeping their rooms dark and quiet, sharing body heat with others, or using simple poultices made from herbs and grains to promote rest. Monastic routines offer another fascinating glimpse into medieval sleep practices. Monks and nuns often slept in dormitory-style arrangements on simple straw or wool mattresses, yet their nights were punctuated by canonical hours, including vigils, matins, and nocturnes. Sleep was segmented and silence was enforced, creating an environment where rest was both communal and disciplined. In some cases, the same dormitories served as spaces for prayer, study, and quiet contemplation, blurring the lines between spiritual practice and sleep. The strict regimen reflected the medieval conviction that sleep was not merely private leisure, but a moral and spiritual responsibility. Even the common medieval household incorporated rituals that combined practicality and superstition. Families often slept near hearths for warmth, with small lamps or candles burning through the night. Livestock might be kept in adjoining rooms, partly for heat and partly for protection, and the smells and sounds of animals became a constant backdrop to sleep. Children were often swaddled in layers and slept close to their parents for safety and warmth, while adults sometimes used simple tools, such as straw-filled mattresses, feather pillows, or wooden bed frames, to manage comfort and deter pests. Every object, every arrangement, and every habit had both a functional and symbolic purpose, reflecting the intertwining of survival, ritual, and superstition. Seasonal variations shaped sleep practices as well. In winter, nights were long, dark, and bitterly cold, prompting families and monastics alike to adopt strategies to maximize warmth and rest. Extra layers of blankets, shared body heat, and carefully positioned fires were critical. In summer, shorter nights and warmer temperatures required fewer coverings, but early rising was common for agricultural work, religious observances, and household duties. This rhythm of sleep, dictated by natural light and seasonal cycles, was universally recognized and adhered to across social classes and geographic regions. Sleep in the medieval world was not uniform. Customs varied widely depending on geography, climate, and culture. In Europe, beds were often elevated and constructed of wood, sometimes suspended by ropes or placed on simple frames to avoid drafts and pests. Wealthy households featured feather-stuffed mattresses, wool blankets, and elaborate canopies, while commoners slept on straw-filled mattresses or rush-stuffed pallets. In castles, bedchambers were drafty and cold, and nobles relied heavily on attendants and shared body heat to stay warm. Privacy was rare. Even kings and queens could be observed during their nocturnal routines by attendants, guards, or visiting courtiers. In contrast, Asian cultures often placed greater emphasis on ritual and harmony in sleep. In Japan, for example, tatami mats and futons were laid directly on the floor, rolled up and stored during the day to make room for other activities. Sleeping arrangements were minimalist yet precise, with careful attention to seasonal changes, natural light, and alignment according to spiritual beliefs. The Japanese nobility often followed elaborate sleep rituals that included purification, meditation, and chanting, blending physical rest with spiritual discipline. In China, bedding for the imperial family included silk sheets, padded mats, and mosquito nets. The Forbidden City contained entire complexes of bedrooms with controlled lighting, temperature management through heated floors or braziers, and attendants ready to assist emperors and high-ranking officials at any hour. In the Middle East, sleep practices were also shaped by climate and religion. Wealthy households used thick carpets, cushions, and mattresses for comfort, often placing beds near windows or courtyards to catch cooling breezes. Islamic tradition emphasized both hygiene and prayer, so nightly ablutions were common, and certain rituals or prayers were performed before sleeping. Sleeping outdoors on mats in courtyards was sometimes practiced during hot summer nights, and patterned textiles were used not only for comfort, but as protection from insects and as symbols of status. Nighttime security influenced sleep practices across all cultures. Castles, manors, and palaces often had guards stationed near bedrooms or along corridors, ensuring that rulers and important officials remained safe throughout the night. In urban homes, families sometimes slept with weapons nearby or positioned themselves near entry points. Livestock kept indoors provided additional security. Their presence deterred burglars and alerted occupants to potential threats. Even bedding arrangements were strategic, with layers of blankets or elevated platforms designed to keep occupants protected from both the elements and unwelcome intruders. Sleep furniture itself reflected cultural priorities. In Europe, four-poster beds with curtains were symbols of wealth, privacy, and status, while in Japan, futons allowed for flexibility and space optimization. In Middle Eastern households, low-lying platforms or divans enabled communal sleeping and lounging, reflecting social customs that emphasized hospitality and shared space. Across these regions, bedding technology was less about comfort alone and more about social meaning, protection, and ritualistic significance. Even the timing of sleep differed. While many European peasants followed the segmented sleep pattern of first and second sleep, in parts of Asia, uninterrupted rest was more common, with short meditation or prayer periods integrated instead of a distinct wakeful interval. Seasonal adjustments were widespread everywhere. Longer nights in Northern Europe necessitated extra warmth and layering, while in warmer climates, people sought cooler, breezy locations or slept in more open, ventilated spaces. These cultural variations demonstrate how medieval people adapted both physically and spiritually to the environment while maintaining beliefs that connected sleep to morality, health, and the unseen world. Nighttime in the medieval world often involved more than just sleep. Many customs and rituals were designed to prepare the body, mind, and spirit for rest while simultaneously protecting sleepers from danger. Food played a key role. People generally ate their final meal at sunset or shortly before retiring. Lighter foods were preferred in warmer months or for those suffering from digestive ailments, while heavier foods, such as stews, breads, and cheese, were consumed during colder months to sustain body heat. Among the nobility, elaborate banquets sometimes extended into the evening, after which courtiers would retire to bed for a period of rest interspersed with private reflection or conversation. Animals were also a consistent presence in medieval bedrooms. Livestock were often kept in the same room as humans, particularly in rural villages, providing both warmth and protection. Dogs might sleep at the foot of the bed to guard against intruders, while cats helped keep mice and other pests away from food and bedding. In castles, exotic pets sometimes accompanied the wealthy to bed, including birds or small mammals, serving as status symbols and companions. The presence of animals was both practical and symbolic, reinforcing ideas of guardianship and domestic order. Seasonal habits influenced bedtime routines. Winter brought long, cold nights, prompting people to layer themselves in heavy clothing, use multiple blankets, and keep fires burning for as long as possible. In the summer, people often sought cooler sleeping arrangements, moving mattresses near open windows, courtyards, or even rooftops in warmer climates. In some regions, it was customary to leave beds unmade during the day so that the bedding could air out and avoid dampness or insects. Such practices, seemingly mundane, were essential for health and comfort and illustrate the adaptability of medieval societies to their environment. In certain regions, particularly within monastic settings, sleep itself was ritualized. Dormitories were shared, but strict rules governed noise, movement, and behavior. Monks and nuns often followed precise schedules that dictated when to rest, when to rise for prayers, and how to maintain discipline even in the vulnerable state of sleep. Children's sleep habits were particularly unusual by modern standards. Infants and young children were swaddled extensively to protect them from cold, disease, and supernatural harm. Older children sometimes shared beds with siblings or parents, depending on the size of the household and the availability of bedding. Lullabies often incorporated prayers or protective verses. Toys, small charms, or religious objects might be placed near the child to provide safety and comfort. Nighttime in the medieval world was not only a time of rest, but also a period fraught with potential dangers. Castles, villages, and even noble households faced threats from thieves, wild animals, and sometimes political intrigue. As a result, sleep was often approached with caution and carefully planned strategies for protection. In rural villages, doors and windows were rarely locked in the way we think of today, but families used large wooden bars, heavy shutters, and simple latches to secure their homes. Livestock sleeping indoors doubled as early warning systems. A startled cow or dog could alert occupants to approaching intruders or predators. In castles and fortified manors, security measures were far more elaborate. Guards were posted along corridors, in towers, and even near sleeping chambers, particularly for kings, queens, and other high-ranking nobles. Royal and noble beds were often arranged in positions that allowed attendants or guards to react immediately in case of emergency. In some cases, attendants slept nearby to ensure that fires were maintained, the room remained warm, and the noble's comfort and safety were never compromised. The very structure of the bedroom was designed with defense in mind, with narrow doorways, strategically placed furniture, and alarm systems, such as bells, to signal danger. In towns and cities, where crime could be more prevalent, families sometimes adopted communal sleeping strategies. Groups of people, particularly in crowded tenements or inns, slept together to deter thieves and share body heat. Street patrols and night watchmen provided additional security, and regulations in many medieval cities required that doors be closed and lights maintained at night to reduce the risk of intrusion or fire. Even the timing of sleep could be influenced by these threats. Families might delay retiring until they were certain their neighborhood was safe, or until household members returned from late tasks. Travelers faced their own unique challenges. Inns and goose houses often provided shared sleeping quarters, where strangers and locals alike slept in close proximity. Security measures included locked chests, guards, and communal arrangements that ensured no one could approach a bed unnoticed. Nobles traveling with large entourages often carried portable beds, bedding, and attendants to recreate a secure and comfortable sleep environment wherever they stayed. Despite these precautions, travelers were always at risk of theft, attack, or illness, making sleep a carefully guarded aspect of life on the road. Even within households, the placement of beds and sleeping arrangements reflected strategic thinking. Beds were often placed away from windows, doors, or chimneys to protect against drafts, intruders, or fire. In wealthier homes, curtains and canopies created a sense of enclosure and safety, while in rural homes, sleeping near the hearth provided both warmth and a measure of defense. The careful positioning of beds, blankets, and pillows was both practical and symbolic, designed to provide comfort, security, and a sense of control in an otherwise unpredictable nighttime environment. Lastly, nighttime rituals extended beyond protection to include preparation for sudden disturbances. Some families kept small weapons near the bed, while others relied on signals or calls to summon help. In castles, drums, bells, or trumpets could alert the entire household to danger. Even the quietest and most routine aspects of sleep, from adjusting blankets to positioning body heat, were influenced by the constant awareness of risk. Sleep in the medieval world was deeply influenced by the natural rhythms of the seasons. Long winter nights brought both challenges and opportunities, while the brevity of summer nights required adjustments to routines. In Northern Europe, winter could bring up to 16 hours of darkness, and households had to find ways to stay warm, safe, and comfortable. Feather mattresses, thick blankets, and shared beds were essential, as were fires maintained late into the night. People often wore multiple layers of clothing, sometimes sleeping fully dressed to conserve heat, while animals were brought indoors both for warmth and for protection from predators. In summer, the approach to sleep changed dramatically. Nights were shorter, and temperatures could rise significantly during the day. People sometimes moved sleeping areas to cooler parts of the house, such as stone floors or shaded courtyards. In warmer climates, it was common to sleep outdoors on mats, terraces, or even rooftops, taking advantage of breezes to stay comfortable. This seasonal flexibility was practical, but also intertwined with cultural and spiritual beliefs, as the timing of sleep and wakefulness was thought to influence health, spiritual favor, and productivity. Religious festivals and observances also shaped sleep patterns. Major celebrations, such as Christmas, Easter, Pentecost, or local saints' days, often involved vigils that extended well into the night. Monks and nuns might remain awake for hours, praying or chanting, while laypeople could attend church services or participate in community feasts and rituals. These disruptions meant that sleep was segmented not only by natural cycles, but also by spiritual and social obligations. People adapted by resting in short intervals or adjusting their routines in anticipation of busy days filled with religious ceremonies. Agricultural life further influenced sleep patterns. Peasants and laborers often synchronized their sleep with seasonal work schedules. During planting or harvest times, early rising was necessary, and rest was carefully timed to conserve energy for long days in the fields. Short daytime naps were sometimes taken during the summer to recover from labor under the sun, while winter provided longer periods of rest due to shorter daylight hours. Even in the most humble households, these adjustments were precise and practical, demonstrating an intimate awareness of the connection between nature, labor, and sleep. Sleep was also influenced by the natural light available in homes and towns. Candles were expensive, so people relied heavily on the sun and moon to regulate their rest. During winter, when darkness fell early, households often began preparations for bed in the late afternoon, while summer nights allowed for extended activity. In urban areas, street lamps were rare, and noise or communal activities could further delay sleep, while in rural areas, quiet and darkness facilitated earlier rest. These environmental factors created a strong link between human sleep patterns and the natural world, reinforcing the idea that rest was not merely a personal habit, but part of a larger ecological and social rhythm. The interplay of season, religion, labor, and climate meant that medieval sleep was rarely uniform. Each household, monastery, or palace adapted uniquely, blending practical measures, spiritual rituals, and cultural norms. Even the timing of meals, the arrangement of beds, and the use of fires or animal companions reflected careful attention to the seasons and the demands they imposed. Nighttime was a dynamic period, full of preparation and adaptation, showing that sleep in the medieval world was a deeply considered, almost sacred aspect of daily life. Dreams held a unique and profound significance in medieval life. Medieval people often interpreted them as messages from God, warnings from spirits, or insights into moral and social order. First sleep, the early phase of segmented sleep, was considered especially potent, as visions appearing during this period were thought to carry particular truth or prophecy. Monks, nobles, and commoners alike would sometimes record their dreams in journals or share them with trusted advisors or religious figures, seeking guidance or divine insight. Among the nobility, dreams could carry political significance. Monarchs and advisors sometimes interpreted visions as warnings of treachery, impending battles, or social unrest. Dream interpreters, often clergy or educated courtiers, would be consulted to provide advice on actions to take, blending superstition, psychology, and governance. Even for ordinary villagers, dreams were imbued with moral and spiritual weight, guiding decisions about marriage, travel, and daily life. By examining these practices, it becomes clear that medieval sleep was a deeply layered experience. Every aspect, from the timing of rest to the arrangement of beds to the interpretation of dreams, was shaped by a combination of practical necessity, cultural custom. Sleep was simultaneously physical, social, and metaphysical, reflecting a world in which the boundaries between waking and dreaming, protection and vulnerability, natural and supernatural, were fluid and interwoven. As the night deepened across medieval Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, people settled into their beds, each household following its own combination of rituals, protections, and adaptations. The world of sleep was one of both practicality and imagination. Shaped by climate, social status, a peasant family huddled together near a fire, livestock providing warmth and security, while a noble slept beneath layers of fine linens. Guarded by attendants, monks rested on straw-stuffed mattresses, only to awaken for midnight prayers, while travelers sought the safety of inns, communal warmth, and ever-vigilant companions. Sleep was never simply a pause from life. Each bed, blanket, and bedtime ritual reflected centuries of adaptation, belief, and survival, creating a night filled with both comfort and caution. The patterns of segmented sleep, the layering of blankets, the careful placement of herbs, and the spiritual practices all reveal a medieval world where rest was deeply intertwined with daily life. In understanding the sleep of medieval people, we gain insight not only into the practicalities of life in centuries past, and the enduring ways in which humans have sought comfort, protection, and meaning in the darkness of night. Sleep in the medieval world was a ritual, a science, a spiritual practice, and a daily testament to human resilience. By observing these centuries-old customs, we see that rest has always been more than just a biological necessity. It is a mirror of culture, belief, and the human experience itself. As you drift into your own night, you carry with you echoes of this history. The medieval world, with all its strange habits, reminds us that sleep has always been a journey, a time of vulnerability, imagination, and quiet reflection. And in the soft glow of candlelight or the warmth of a shared blanket, the people of centuries past lie down, just as we do,